One day I'll tell you the mysterious story of the 2109, but I'll save that for another day. I got a new house. Look, it's actually tidy. I'm on holiday. I'm here on my own, apart from Tilly, and we've got to wait for everyone else to finish work and school and college and uni. So while we wait, I want to do something that I promised you a week or two ago. I want to tell you the story, the mysterious story of the 2109. Tilly's sitting comfortably. Are you? Then I will begin. It was the mid-80s, around 85. A youngish couple called Ken and Debbie moved into a new cottage in the village of Dodleston in Cheshire, which is not too far from where I live. Different county, but not too far in the general scheme of things. And it was a very, very old cottage. And Dodleston, the village, has been around since medieval times, if not before. They started to have weird things happen. So, like, chairs would stand on their own and things would move around the kitchen, and they thought they had a poltergeist. But things didn't stop there. Ken and Debbie had a friend staying. This friend was writing a play. She was a writer. And Ken borrowed a computer from school. He was an economics teacher at the time. And they had a spare computer and he brought it home so that the friend could write. And they set the computer up on the kitchen table. It was the days before the internet and it didn't have any form of network connection. That needs to be made clear to begin with. Things started to be written. First, I think it was on the floor or on the walls. And then, strangely, one day, a message appeared on the computer from someone who called themselves Lucas, and it was written in very oldie-worldy English language. Ken took the initiative, and his friend Peter, who also worked at the school, knew a little bit about medieval oldie-worldy English. He said, yeah, it's oldie-worldy English. It's the kind of dialect is a bit strange, the grammar's strange, but yeah, oldie-worldy English. So they started communicating with this person called Lucas. To cut a long story short, because this really is just a preamble to the thing that I find the most interesting part. It turns out that Lucas lived in 1546. In the final year of the reign of Henry VIII. If you know your English history, Henry VIII of the 6 wives, divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. Him. It turns out that Lucas wasn't his real name. His real name was Thomas. Thomas was in trouble because they thought he was involved in some kind of witchcraft, talking to people from his future. And there's a long story behind that. And if you do want to find all the ins and outs of the story, then I'd recommend you read Ken's book, which is called The Vertical Plane. It's a difficult book to get hold of now because it's out of print, but I found it on Amazon. And there's numerous websites that have talked about it. And even way back when, there was a programme like about, you know, strange happenings introduced by Carol Vorderman. And they did a piece on it. So I'll leave the link to that in the description box, just in case you just want a quick kind of half hour to look at the story. Now, how was Thomas able to communicate via a Leams voice, that's what he called it, and it appeared that he wasn't actually using a computer, but it's actually quite unclear about how he was communicating in a time when they didn't know what the computer was. Liam's Boys was Lightbox. It turns out that this was some kind of experiment, a time travel experiment created by the 2109, and it appears that they were in Ken and Deb's future. Whether it's the year 2109 or whether 2109 is a code for something, maybe the name of the experiment, the number of the experiment. But they were communicating through time, and they'd set up this experiment, and they had given the Liam's Boys ability to Thomas. Why Thomas? Who knows? It's the 2109 that intrigues me the most. It might not be physically possible to move matter from one time to another, but could it be possible to communicate from one time to another using means that is way beyond our understanding? That's what always intrigued me. They got some kind of experts in psychic things, psychic abilities, in to investigate, and there was numerous anomalies with this whole thing. Debs had to be in the vicinity for things to occur. 2109 got very shirty. They weren't very nice people. They got very shirty when they realised they were being investigated. Could this be some kind of elaborate hoax, therefore, and the hoaxer trying to throw these experts off the scent? It would seem that way, wouldn't it? Ken and Peter, the two school teachers, have been interviewed and have categorically said they had got nothing to gain. They've never made any financial gain or anything like that from this story. The whole kind of thing hinges really around Debs. So is Debs the hoaxer? In the programme, the one, I can't remember the name of it, but the one introduced by Carol Vorderman, they got a psychologist to investigate the case, Professor Richard Wiseman, who is a well-known skeptic, and he does his research in like people who believe in the paranormal. And he got on the case and took some of the writings from Thomas, who was writing in 1546, to a linguistics expert who was an expert in the writings of that time. And they got her to analyse the text from Thomas and analyse Ken's writing. And there were similarities in the way things were worded between Ken and Thomas. So is Ken the hoaxer? Ken has since distanced himself from the whole thing. He was interviewed on the programme, as I said, as was Peter, and Debs was. But Peter didn't mind his kind of identity being let out there. But Ken and Debs wished not to be like they spoke, but they wished not to be like, you know, in front of the camera. Ken has since gone on to bigger and better things. He's no longer a school teacher. And because they've distanced themselves so much, I feel a bit shady, kind of putting into the public domain exactly what Ken is doing now, although I know. And I know this because I actually know Deb. I know Deb personally. I don't know her terribly well. I've met her a few times. She's a friend on Facebook. The connection is that an ex-colleague of mine, it's a small world, it's a small world. The colleague of mine was the PhD student of Professor Richard Wiseman. I ended up sharing an office for several years with this colleague, who then became involved with Deb. Right, so Deb's like the friend of a friend. And I've spoken to Deb about this situation with Thomas. Like I said, I don't want to say what Ken is doing now. He's gone on to bigger and better things. I don't want to tell you specifically who Deb is either. I want to believe it. I so want to believe it, especially as I have that kind of, you know, tenuous but still personal connection with the people involved, or at least one of them. But in my heart of hearts, I think it's a hoax. I think it's an elaborate hoax. I don't want to say whether it's Ken, Debbie or Peter. I don't know anything about Peter anyway. It's got to be either Ken or Debbie. Right? Peter was just a friend who was helping to analyse some of their words. And the fact that they've kind of distanced themselves from this, I don't know. I don't know. It's got to be a hoax, hasn't it, guys? Come on, it has got to be a hoax. But it's talked about in the, you know, the dark recesses of the internet where these unusual things are spoken about. And apparently there's been like similar cases that have happened where there's been supposed experiments from the future, communications from the future. And I am completely intrigued by the 2109. The communication stopped after, I think it was around 18 months. Again, there's a whole story behind that. But the 2109 said that Ken was destined for bigger and better things, in effect. That's the story. And it's one of those where I want it so much to be true, but I know in my heart of hearts it's a hoax. But guys, what do you think? Communication from one time to another, even if it's not the transmission of matter from one time to another, but it's some form of energy communication. Could it be possible that in the next century there are experiments moving energy beyond the speed of light? Oh, please let it be true. Guys, there you go, that's the story. Very off topic for this channel, but I did say I'd tell you the story one day. And it's killed a bit of time for me, and Tilly is fast asleep. The light is fading in this room. Tilly is fast asleep here. So, back to the normal vegan drama, calling out the carnies, putting the world of science to rights for them, and all of that fun stuff will resume tomorrow. But I would appreciate your comments on this story. If you had anything similar happen to you, that would be fascinating. But guys, if you're enjoying the channel and not yet subscribed, you know what to do. Subscribe, like the video, and I will speak to you tomorrow. Bye guys.